Welcome, everyone. My name's Leah. I'm the Director of Product and Content Marketing here at Encircle, and really excited for this session today. It is a field-first, real-world conversation. You may have seen it 2 weeks ago. We officially announced Encircle's acquisition of The Edge. So we are going to get into the details around that. We built this session with insight from the people who live it. So Tom, Paul, TJ, they are combining, and in this session, combining decades of experience from the field to the office for technology and everything in between. So it's really exciting. We're going to get 3 different perspectives. We've got Paul Donald, the CEO and founder of Encircle. We've got Tom McGuire, who is going to bring us the methodology and the information around the edge. And then we've got TJ, the boots on the ground, the field reality. We've got Paul and Tom, who are going to live up here, and TJ lives every day in the field, working with Encircle, with the edge, and understands the day-to-day challenges, frustrations, and everything around restoration. But super excited to get into it, and I'm going to throw things over to Paul, and he's going to talk through the new reality of restoration. Then we'll get over to Tom. He's going to talk about production rates, give a demo of the edge, and then TJ is going to jump into what does this all mean? What does this look like in the field day to day? And then we'll wrap things up with a great fireside chat between these three great men. And of course, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. But like I said, I'm going to jump in and give time for questions throughout. Okay, Paul, as promised, over to you, and I'm going to disappear.
Wonderful. Thank you for kicking us off, Leah, and thank you all the guests who have joined us today. The restoration industry is critical globally. It's not decreasing in overall size. It's a growing industry, but certainly it's become more challenged, and I'm pretty sure all of you can agree to that. Restoration today, you're running a business that's more complex because you've got reviewers, you've got adjusters, you've got systems, all hyper-analyzing the work you do. And for a restorer, you go out on site, you're the hero. Your job is to go out there and understand what has happened, how to mitigate the loss, get it back to a stable position, and then rebuild. Well, you've got people on you saying, can you get this done faster? Get it done faster, get it done faster. Well, when we go through the reports, and I'll go through a bit of the RA industry report, what it's really telling us is we need to step back, or restorers need to step back and look at their business and understand, how are you protecting your business first and being a hero second? And in fact, by analyzing your business, your standard operating procedures, the systems you use, the training you put in place, you can get control of it. And as you're seeing across the economy today, businesses are struggling. And restorers, you've seen probably a 25 to 40% decrease in claim volume this year alone. That now requires a different mindset. And so how are you planning for that? Are you in good times planning that things may get slow? So we're doing our training. We're optimizing our marketing muscles to be able to bring on business that is non-insurance related. Now, what are the things we're doing to help us manage through the ups and downs, the cyclical business that restoration most often is? And it's not easy. It requires a real deep focus. So talking to, like, we'll have TJ talk about what is it like being an operator. We'll have Tom talk about really understanding the job before you get started. These are important things that you want to consider as we go through, because profitability is a byproduct of team-wide habits and clear systems. So let me state it again. Profitability is the byproduct of team-wide habits and clear systems. This isn't just throwing a spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks, or winging it just to get the job done and please the policyholder. It's really a lot of forethought and planning that goes into running your business. And then you've got something that's scalable, because there's no magic formula or plug and play solution for operating in what is a chaotic ecosystem. The restorer, who is tactile oriented, the insurance company that's administrative natured, made up of lawyers, actuaries, and accountants, and then the policyholder, which can be any one of the above or something else. Pleasing everybody comes down to setting the right expectations. So let's dig a little bit into the RAA cost of doing business report. There was really, and this is my assessment of it. I hope everybody's had a chance to read the report, but my assessment of this is really fundamental. And it comes down to, are you protecting your margin? What is your margin defense? Cash flow mastery. Are you protecting that cash flow? And operational resilience. Those three things have come to the top of the pile of things that restorers have to be focused on. And all three of those, that's operational mindset. Not one of those has talked about, being better at doing the physical work. So let's look at margin defense. The most significant financial challenge for the industry is shrinking margins. And of course, the 10 and 10 model that's promoted often is just not efficient or effective in your business, because most of you have overheads that are 27 to 38%. But it's almost a losing battle in certain circumstances, arguing against the 10 and 10. And so you have to look at, where are opportunities for margin? And am I picking that up on the job site? When you look at the highest margin components, they're not always the big job types, the drywall, the flooring, but it's the little things. Are you picking up on all the masking, the plastic that you're putting in, the doorknobs you're removing and replacing, the light switches, the covers? Are you picking up every billable item? Because when you think about it, the reviewer, the adjuster, all of the other parties are looking to reduce your invoice. You've got to look for every way to get acceptable billing into your invoice, and better yet, outlined in the scope. And that's something we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Cash flow mastery. Is your documentation helping you get paid faster? Are you addressing the conflicts up front, such that when you're done the job, you can invoice with confidence and the payer can pay with confidence? That's an important component to driving cash flow. The average restorer is sitting at about 60 days, many 90 days, and I hear about contractors that are arguing over invoices that are over a year old. And almost inevitably, it comes back to the level of documentation that they did, the amount of human resources they put on the site, the amount of equipment they put on the site that didn't align to what their expectations were on productivity. And now you've got this friction point of, now you have to prove that it was necessary. And if you don't have the documentation, it's a back and forth negotiation where the restorer typically is reducing their invoice. That is just not something that is effective to a growing and scaling business. It will halt growth. And so being able to document and run your business such that you're reducing conflicts up front in order to get a faster payment is absolutely key for every restorer to focus on. And then last but not least, operational resilience. It is so important in today's day and age that as we're building systems and SOPs that align to a faster moving environment, we need to bring our people along. The level of training that our people need is way more than it was 5 years ago on the whys we need of why we need the documentation we need, why we need the scope detailed out on day one so that we can set the right steps for not only our internal people, but we can get alignment with the restorer, really reducing the amount of back and forth that happens and driving more business volume. If we can get our SOPs aligned with our systems and our people trained on those, we should be able to reduce a lot of the overhead costs and drive up efficiency to be able to do more work in the good times and also be able to manage through on the leaner times like we're seeing out there today. So delaying investments in technology, technological tools that streamline your estimating, your field documentation, your operational workflows where you make or lose money, which is in the field, is really it's going to hurt your business. Those that are investing in those tools are certainly able to scale and weather the storms that do hit. So technology investment is a prerequisite for overcoming scaling bottlenecks and getting through the lean periods. So let's talk about the scope, because this is a good point to lead off with scope. Too many times what we hear is that PMs and others in the field are just too busy. There's so much going on that they take down high-level notes on the job, but they don't have the time while they're on site to document a complete scope. And unfortunately, that's hurting a lot of restoration contractors to be able to pick up that high margin elements that can boost their profit margins. And so the scope really is the cornerstone of describing the cause of loss, the resulting damages, and the work that needs to be done. Out of that, we build a work order that clearly lays out the steps that our teams need to follow so that they can avoid margin killers, like making mistakes on jobs. And one restorer just a couple weeks ago was lamenting the problem of one of his teams on site, made a mistake. They were supposed to just lift the carpet, but cut out the underpad. Unfortunately, they cut out the carpet and the underpad on this one section and ended up having to replace the carpet across the whole property on their dime. That's a margin killer right there. Putting too many people on a job site that doesn't warrant it is another margin killer, because you still have to pay for those human resources, but the carrier may not pay for it. So how do we get to a reasonable number right at the outset so we set those goalposts? And then it comes down to how much equipment am I putting on site? A margin killer obviously is not putting enough equipment on site because I didn't do a dry plan. I didn't properly document it and calculate it to make sure I maximize the amount of equipment, but I don't go over. That's a mistake that restorers make because they're too busy. Well, this should all be laid out in the scope, and something that Encircle is really focused on. My team has said, listen, we've got to have a platform that allows the field workers to document every aspect of the job, so they're not leaving anything on the table, but they're not doing work that they won't get paid for. And so how do we outline that? It's got to be in the scope, and that drives your work order, it drives your estimate, and it also drives your initial communication with the adjuster so that you all get on the same page. So when your scope is strong, your estimates should be fast. They should be detailed and fully backed up on that. So with that, let me transition to the Edge. Why did we acquire the Edge? Well, if you look at history with Encircle, our whole focus has been on field documentation. And there's key elements that are unique product sets within Encircle. So it's obviously our photos, videos, and 360s. Those are critical for giving visual evidence of the loss and what caused the loss, the resulting damages, and what needs to be done. Then there's how we capture the notes with added photos and videos that substantiate what you're showing the adjuster or the customer within the photos and the details of the job. You've got hydro for moisture mapping. You've got our contents platform for documenting contents. And that's not just if you do contents handling in terms of cleaning or disposal. It's really documenting pre-existing conditions, because how many of you have been blamed for the dent in the fridge, the damage to the dining room table, damage to the flooring? Those are all big margin killers, and you all face it on a regular basis. Using the documentation within Encircle to capture that information so that you can prove that you didn't damage the property while you were doing the work is important. Then beyond that, you've got the reports that detail out all of the key components to whomever you're dealing with. So the adjusters, the reviewers, and it all goes into either exact analysis or totality estimate, or our PDFs are sent directly to the customer. The other components of the platform that are important to leverage is the forms. Are you getting digital signatures on your authorization form? If you're starting a job without an authorization form, that's obviously a huge risk to your business. Are we capturing health and safety forms on site? Are we capturing health issues of the policyholder that have to be considered? These are all components that can be captured within our forms. And then you've got the floor plan that substantiates the layout, the amount of work, the amount of equipment, and of course the where the work is happening within the premises, so that the adjuster or the reviewer can see what are the elements affecting the workflow. So this all leads to the information of how do we get this scope on the job. But it doesn't necessarily give you and your team a clear understanding of how much resources do I need? How many people do I need to put on this job? How much equipment do we need? Well, you get that with hydro, but not with the ROM. And then, of course, how much consumables are we going to use on this job? And that's where the ROM comes into play. It's really taking that field documentation you're already doing in Encircle, instantly generating what is a clear understanding of the scope, the size of this job in terms of dollar cost, number of people, amount of equipment, amount of supplies. And that aligns with the scope that will eventually generate automatically within Encircle. So you've seen us come all the way through with developing these core applications within field documentation. And I'm excited to say that now is the opportunity to now leverage that to save you time. Because at the outset, what I mentioned was a lot of times the PMs and techs in the field don't have time to do the administrative work behind generating the full detailed scope while they're on site. Well, with the Edge and with our field documentation, we're going to allow the PMs and others on site to be able to accomplish this work with very little overhead. Literally in minutes, you're capturing the details and you're publishing the details that you need in order to get the rest of the ecosystem aligned and get this job moving while protecting your margins. So incredibly exciting part of where we're going as a company. It's really putting the control back into the contractor's hands. It's giving you the ability to set clear goalposts for your teams, but also really have important discussions with the adjuster up front, because typically the negotiation and the discussions happen on day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, after you've written the estimate and sent it over. And that's not the time to handle disputes, because unfortunately you're not in a position of strength. The time to be able to handle those is to drop the ROM and the complete scope into your Encircle report with all of your other photographic evidence, your moisture map, your contents laid out, your auth forms, all of the details there in your 12 or 24-hour report. So we want to back up all of that right to the day 1 or at least by day 2, so that now you're in a position to negotiate and substantiate the details that the carrier needs in order to pay you. We are very confident that this is going to speed up AR. In fact, our goal is to make sure that we're helping those restorers that are committed to being operators to get that AR down below, to 30 days or below. And it is entirely possible because restorers are doing that today. So really, the vision of Encircle is to allow you to be that hero on site, to do that work that you take pride in reestablishing people to a pre-loss condition. That is honorable. I've spent time on job sites myself, and I know just how difficult your jobs and your team's jobs are. And I take my hat off to you every day. But what we can't allow happen is that weeks or a month after, that nobody's remembering the hard work that you put into it, and all they're doing is now nickel and diming you. And that's not fair to you, your business, your employees, and it's not going to help you scale. By providing you all of the evidence up front, and with the ROM and with the scope of work all detailed out with very little administrative overhead, you're now able to establish your ground up front and decide, is this a job that I want to take on? Is it profitable for me? Every business owner has to really consider what work is in my core competency that I can generate a significant profit margin on. One of the things we've seen in the cost of doing business report is there's way too many restorers that aren't turning a profit. And there's way too many that are returning a net profit of less than 10%. That's just not fair for how hard this industry works. And we believe that by combining all of these elements, we can now bring up that profit margin by alerting you to whether this is a job that you can handle, because with the ROM, you'll be able to see right up front, this is what I'm going to need in order to, in terms of the cost of the value of the job, in order to do it properly. And if I'm not getting paid for it, do I want to take on this risk? Versus starting the job and then going through the process and then working to get paid, which again, if you're carrying the costs and you're applying all of the administrative overhead to chase the dollars, there's no way you're going to get close to a 10% overhead that those in the industry think you deserve. So that's our goal. We're really proud of where we've come to. For those that are using Encircle today, thank you for helping us get to this point in the journey. And I'm super excited to carry it on with Tom and the Edge and lots of other really cool technology that we'll be bringing forward over the next year.
Thanks so much, Paul. And before we move on to the man of the hour to give us a demo of the Edge and talk through his years of experience, I'm going to launch a quick poll to just gather some information from the audience around current state for yourself. So just ties in with a lot of what Paul was talking about. So what are your biggest challenges with getting paid on time and in full? So choose all the things that apply here. Hopefully everyone can see the poll. So if you have a chance to throw there we go. We see the answers coming in now. So just throw your answers in as we go. I'll leave this up for a couple of minutes. And Tom, I'm going to throw it over to you. And again, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A box. We can ask them as we go, but we will also have time at the end to ask some questions and get some great answers. Okay. Tom, over to you.
Well, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here with everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. Very excited to have the Edge part of the Encircle family, and even more excited about where we're going with the next generation. So with that, let's if you're not familiar with the Edge, I'm going to give you a little background on where it comes from and why. And I'm a restorer. I've been in the restoration business since 1986. And there's a lot of things that have changed since 1986, but there's a lot of things that are the same. So in other words, we're still drying, we're still cleaning, we're still demoing. We're doing all the things that we were doing then. We're still doing them now. But there was one common factor that we've found throughout all of the time of restoration is labor production rate. Labor production is the most common factor in our industry. And it's sometimes, well, a lot of times, it's the most overlooked factor on your projects. What the labor production rate does is it helps us determine the baseline labor of our projects. And why is that important? Well, Paul was talking about the scope of work. And the scope of work is the single most important document on the project. And we can't do a good scope until we've gotten our estimate. So many times, especially on big projects, and I've been guilty and been there, where we're sitting around arguing and going about the number, and then by the time we get done with finally getting our number together, now we don't have enough time to work on our scope because we're on an accelerated schedule to get an estimate and a proposal together. And so the Edge was born by restorers using restoration data. the same data that all of you are sitting on in your offices, in your business files right now. And so everything that we're going to talk about applies to what you are doing right now today in your businesses. And so we started it in the original formulas for the Edge were started in the late 90s. Around 1998 was when we first started to put them together, and we put them together so that we could onboard estimators quickly. And we were using the data that we had gathered on projects so that we could onboard, we could take somebody off the street almost and turn them into an estimator in 48 hours. And so we could only do that by understanding our project's performance from the past. Our past performance is what promotes us and propels us in the future. And so completely all the way back into the late 90s, we've been using this system. And I currently, I'm still in the field. I'm a consultant. I'm still out there with you guys, the restorers, and still using exactly what we're going to show you. And so I'm very excited about where we are today. We built it so that when I put together the software in 2020, the name on it was, I called it the Edge. And it's called the Edge because it's meant to give you the edge over your competitors. It's meant to give you the edge over how you do business overall. And so it's all there. And what we're going to talk about is the ROM. We're going to get into the ROM part of it. And remember, ROM stands for rough order of magnitude. It's a military term, but what you have to remember is rough does not mean a detailed 130-page estimate. That is your invoice. What it means is a number that you can come to, that you can use right now, and you have confidence in it, because what's the first thing that somebody asks, that the adjuster or the client asks you on a job when you get there? How much is it going to cost? The next one is how long is it going to take? Those are important questions that we need to be able to answer. The Edge gives you that answer. It works as a companion tool to everything that you're doing right now. This isn't meant to replace or make your life more difficult. It is the perfect tool that you can use on the front end of all of your projects. TJ is going to come on in a little bit, and we're going to do an estimate for a residential. I'm going to do a quick estimate on a commercial project. And we're going to show you, and TJ is going to talk about how this works for him on the front end of projects. And that's where the power of this tool is. You can create your ROM, your rough order of magnitude number on the front end, and then still use Xactimate, still use whatever system that you're using on the back end when you have time. Where we see this very, very valuable tool come into play is down here in the States. I live in Florida, and I apologize right now. I'm going through a big allergy season for me, so if I sniffle and any of that, I'm sorry. I live in Florida, and we have hurricanes, and there's times where guys will be putting together an estimate on maybe 20 to 30 projects at a time per day. And what this tool does is it gives them the power to put together an estimate on all of those in one day, and then work in the Xactimate estimates for all of those over the next week or so. So the power of the tool is speed, accuracy, and it's all built on data that we've been gathering for 3 decades. So some of the pitfalls of estimating, what people fall into is the documentation, number one. Not understanding the production rate is number two. That the production rate is the amount of production that you're going to expect out of each person that's working on that job. When you have that factor, you can determine how much staff you need on that job. Like Paul said in the opening, one of the number one killers of profit on your project is too many people on the job. One of the number one killers of your top line, your budget, your project budget, is too many people on the job. Then you might say, well, Tom, what are you talking about? We just put as many people out there as needed. Well, what you always have to remember is the first time that you do a job as a restorer is not the first time that job has been done. There's a lot of history and data that is behind all of the projects that have been done in the past. And so I'm also a third-party consultant, and I see files from restorers. I'm still a restorer, but I'm also a third-party consultant. And we see it in the field all the time where a budget that should be much lower was blowing up because there was too much labor on the job, and the restorer just didn't know how to factor their labor. Because if you think about all the training that we have in our industry, a lot of it is focused on what? Sizing equipment. And so sizing equipment is what? When you have CFM or pints per day, that's your production rate of your equipment. So why are we not using the production rate of our people? The most important factor in estimating is the production rate of our people, not the equipment. That's the easy part. The people part is where we get in trouble with our invoices. They'll be over budget. It adds to our payment time. So you might have a file that is taking a long time to get paid. It's because it's over budget, and it's going to be a red flag. So we want to have the tools so that you can be in a range. You can stay off the radar with third-party consultants and adjusters. You'll be in that range. You'll get paid quicker on your projects. You'll have less blowback. You'll have less red flags that will come up, and you will perform your jobs at a higher, more efficient rate. All right, so I've got to stay on target here. If you guys know me, you know that I'm very passionate about our industry and about what we do. And if you ever have some time to kill and you want to talk about things, you just call me up, and I'll give you the history of restoration and all the fun stuff. So we're going to jump in here. If I can get my phone to be quiet over here, and we're going to get into the edge, and hopefully everything is good here. Leah, I'm going to switch over here. And what we're going to do is now I've already come in and I've filled in some blanks here because during the demo phase, we have a very short window here. And so we're just going to go right into it. And so I've already added some features in here. And if you've used the Edge before, you'll see that we've been in 2025. We have made an update to the Edge about every 16 days. So we've done a lot of changes that are functions. And if you know me, you know that I'm a practical person. I want things that work and that are accurate. And so I don't want a lot of stuff that is wasting my time, because none of us have too much time on our hands. I would almost, if you put the poll up, say, do you have too much time on your hands? There would be absolutely none of you that would say that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a Holiday Inn as our example. Now, down here, you'll see 150 square feet. This is our labor production rate. This is our sweet spot. In other words, this is our target, our standard target. So when we talk about labor production, it's how much one person can do in an 8-hour period or a shift. And so 150 square feet is our target. Now, most companies aren't reaching that. They're actually a little bit less than that. Our target back in the 90s used to be 170. So that tells you what's happened over time. We're actually at 150. And I'm right now almost at a point to where we're going to reduce it down to 130 or 140 because we're working less efficient today. And one of the reasons is because everybody has one of these, our smartphones, because every time it rings, dings, or pings, we got to answer it. We got to stop working. And so that slows us down. So when you're thinking about labor production in 150 square feet, that's going to be our starting point. We're either going to go up or we're going to go down from 150. If the job is more difficult, we're going to go down. So we'd be at 120, 90. That's going to be a more difficult project. An easier project with less things that are bogging us down, the production rate's going to go up. It might be at 200 or 250. So let's jump in here. I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to show you how we're going to determine. So all of that information that I just talked about is cooked into our system here. And this is our production rate calculator. And we have our historical data is built into this. And so you'll see when I click on hospitality, it's going to start out at 305. If we go down here to the bottom, maybe into medical, you'll see our starting point is 50 points lower at 250. The reason that is because medical is more difficult. There's more things that are slowing us down. Hospitality, they want us in and out. And so we're going to get in and out here. So I'm going to get down the road here. I'm going to select everything that applies to this job. We're going to say it's a light fire and water damage job. We're going to pick the maximum ceiling height. For the algorithm, we're going to pick the maximum ceiling height in a Holiday Inn is typically 13 to 20 feet. We're going to do a 7-story building, content concentration. We're going to put it at a level 3. We have a description: open facility, congested facility, heavily congested facility. I'm going to put it at a 3. The same with contaminant level. Again, I'm just clicking on everything that applies. We're going to do the HVAC, the demo. We're going to do content manipulation, false air. That's going to be any air above the ceiling line that may be trapped. That's going to hold odor. Containment, we won't do any containment on this job. This would be primarily for asbestos related mold and asbestos jobs. It wouldn't be a drying chamber. True containment, where you're going in and out of PPE. We're going to put in our elevator system. Then we're going to plug this in. So now we're at 160. And you'll see the metric rate down here because the system works anywhere in the world. And so whether it's square meters or square feet, it doesn't matter. So here's our square meter rate or our square footage. So for our friends in Australia and in parts of in UK and parts of Canada, if you're using the metric form, you can use square meters. We won't hold it against you. And so let me put in 100,000 square feet. And we're going to say the hotel said, Tom, we want you and your guys out of here in 18 days. We've got a big convention coming up. So I'm going to click on that. And just by entering in that information, so the affected area, square footage, the working days, and our production rate, we have just ran our first calculation. So it has already calculated, and if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see it's already calculated that we need 35 production laborers and 4 supervisors, a project manager, and a project accountant. So we know this as our baseline that we need 35 people. So this is the only system of its kind that does that instantly for you, that will calculate your labor. Next up, I'm going to add in some labor. So I just push on this little button over here, and you can see I added in a couple here before we got on here. I'm going to add in 4 more supervisors because we have 8 stories. I want a supervisor per floor, and I'm going to add in 5 more production people, production laborers, so that we have an even 40. My next little step here is going to be, it's also instantly calculated our supplies and materials, our company-owned equipment, our subcontractors, and our subsistence. Now I'm going to plug in my experience here because we're going to move this number here to 100%. And this is our company-owned equipment. Because it's a Holiday Inn and all the guest rooms, we're going to use LGRs, air movers, and air scrubbers. And so we're going to bump that number to 100%. I'm going to leave our supplies and materials at 25%. I'm going to leave our subcontractors, and I'm going to leave subsistence in there too. We're going to say we're down here in Florida after a hurricane. Everybody's on the road. We're going to have our subsistence is our travel, our per diem, our hotels, airfares, everything like that. All right, so let me jump in here. Our next step, I've already added in our subcontractors. So you can see we have power distribution because the one thing about hotels, they don't have enough power. So we're going to have to provide power to generate for all of our equipment that we're going to have on the job. So if you have power distribution, you're going to have a generator. You're also going to have fuel. So these are our cost plus items. I always put in everything at a cost plus 20%, straight 20%. I'm not a big 10 and 10 guy. I think 10 and 10 is an old philosophy that needs to go away, but that's just my opinion. Next up, we're going to add in a supplemental drying. So we're going to say that 10,000 square feet of the building is going to be done with desiccant drying. So we're going to add in desiccant drying. What this number, the square footage number, and these are all proven numbers, and you might find that if you go through your data that you might say, Tom, our numbers are more like $4 or $5 a square foot. That's great. You can adjust this. This system is fully adjustable. All of the rates, all of the labor rates are your rates. Everything in here. So if I go back up in here, these rates here in our labor, these are all adjustable to your rates, whether you're using Xactimate rates or your time and material rates. Doesn't matter. It's all based on you and your rates, whether you're in New York, Southern California, or here in Florida, it doesn't matter. Or the UK or Melbourne, Australia, it doesn't matter. So we're going to add in 10,000 square feet, and then we're going to add in our deodorization, because obviously we're going to have to deodorize. This is a proven square footage number for deodorization with hydroxyls and with ProCure. So 2 totally different methods. So next up, we're going to add in some drywall. You can go to the drop down, pull up, pick your poison. These are blend rates out of Xactimate in Southern California. You can add in as much as you want here. You can see we added in some drywall and some COVID cleaning. Our next step here is our custom fees, our taxable amount, and we're going to get down here to the bottom. Here's our number, and you can see, even with me adding in stuff, and TJ will tell you in a little bit, if you're calling me up with this scenario right now, I'm going to put this together in about 15 minutes because of experience. The more you use the edge, the more powerful you become, and the more powerful it becomes for you. You will create ROM numbers. Once you get your damage assessment done, you will be creating ROM numbers very fast that you're very confident in. And we have clients that only use the edge now. And so this would be our number. We're going to give a range. Here's our low number, and here's our high number and our medium number. Because remember, our ROM, we're not talking about not to exceed. We're talking about a ROM, and so we're going to say, here's our range. For this project, I would be very comfortable telling the adjuster we're going to be between 1.2 and 1.3 at about a $14 square foot. I know with my experience, and this is an actual project, I know from my experience that we did this project for $14.50 per square foot and never got questioned. So that's what this is about. It's about giving you a ROM that is quick, efficient, accurate, and gets you paid. All right. So with that, now I'm going to bring TJ in. And TJ, I am going to open up a brand new file, and we're just going to do a T3 here. And when you're ready, what we're going to do now is we're going to do a residential project. And what you just seen me do, that is a real project. And we've done hundreds of Holiday Inns over my career, and that's why I use that as an example, because we've done so much with it. So TJ, if you out there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay, Tom?
I can. We are just going to run through. Now, this is going to be a residential job, and so it will look a little bit different. But TJ is going to tell me the details, and we'll plug it in, and I'll follow his direction. We haven't practiced this, so I don't know. We're going to see what happens.
All right, Tom, let's lay out the scenario. So you have a residential water loss. Let's say the home is 2,000 square feet. If you want to go ahead and plug that in.
All right,
We have it was a water damage. Let's say it was a toilet supply line burst upstairs on the second story and affected both the second story and the bottom level below. We're going to try to get this mitigation done in 7 days. And so if you go into your production rate calculator, let's see what production rate might apply to this job.
We're going to select residential.
Yep. And we'll just select water. It's a clean water loss, so we're not going to select mold or anything. We'll do, let's adjust our ceiling heights to 10 feet.
Okay.
Our stories would be a 2-story water loss.
Okay.
Our content concentration will probably be a level 3 just because it's a residential setting. You have tons of content.
Yep.
Contaminant level, I traditionally will probably go with a 2.
Okay.
Let's see what else might apply here. We'll do demo content, and I guess that's probably pretty good.
You good with 217?
Yeah, it might be a little high residential. You have, especially with, working on 2 stories, all the content concentration.
You want to change? Why don't we do this?
Yeah, get it closer to 200. We can roll with that.
All right. We can always adjust it down below here also.
Yeah, let's see what kind of labor it shoots out for us.
Okay, so now that's instantly calculated for us. So it's going to tell us, and we're going to come in and we're going to make some adjustments here, right, TJ? We're going to take out project accountant.
Yep, we'll take out the project accountant. This isn't a large commercial loss, so you're not going to have a project accountant on site. So let's move down to our production labor. Because this is a smaller, residential loss, we're going to have to beef up our production labor here to get this done in 7 days. One
so
guy.
We're going to add labor.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would probably take this up to 4, 2 guys. Each floor is going to make a lot more sense.
For this full 7 days.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
So we only have 4 guys. 1 supervisor and 1 PM is plenty sufficient for this scale of work. So I think I'm pretty good on our labor there. So going
next
down
up,
to our project costs. Supplies and materials. It's a clean water loss. I don't think that we're going to have a ton of supplies. I might bump that down to 20%. Company-owned equipment, we'll be using all our own equipment. I'll probably, just because I know the data in my business around this, we'll probably bump that up to 35%, 40%. See where that gets us. Probably not going to have any subcontractors on this job. So take that out, and no substance either.
any vendors, subcontractors? No.
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Very
Any-
basic water loss, just cleaning and drying. So we've got
Any-
full power, no power loss.
Any pack out or anything like that?
Yeah, we'll probably will have some pack out, and you could look at it two ways, whether you wanted to self-perform it or bring in a pack out subcontractor.
Here's our pack out window.
Yep.
So we'll just, what do you want to select in here? What do you feel like?
Level 2, medium congestion.
Okay. All right.
Throw our 2,000 square feet in there for pack out. And since we're using company-owned equipment, I think I'm pretty good on that number. I think we could leave structural drying blank.
Good.
If you want to throw a number for our taxes in there, I think our contents was around $5,000 or materials.
Well, amount on it, or what are you thinking? Or for materials, did you purchase any supplies?
Yeah, it'd just be our supplies and materials.
Okay. I'll just throw something in here. And how much was it?
Well, we already captured it above, right? In our supplies and materials.
Yeah, so we should be all right.
Yep.
All right. Oop. Super. All right. Anything else?
No, let's see where that spit out our ROM here. So our quick check per square foot, $26, is probably a little bit high. I might want to go back and make some adjustments to bring that down probably closer to 20 square feet, just because we know based on our historical data, right, that we're not going to perform that job at that high of a square foot number.
We could do this too. We could go a range. We could throw that in here too. And so now that would drop it down where our low range would be 47 and our high range would be, so that would be our median then would be 52. We could do that also.
Tom and TJ, someone just pointed out in the chat that there's actually one too many people on your labor calculation. There was the one initial production labor, and then you added 4 more, and I think TJ only wanted 4 total. So I think that might.
Yeah, I mean, we could bump that down to 3. That's a good catch.
All right, we've got an active audience. I love it. Thank you. So then that would adjust our number down.
Yeah, I would feel pretty, this might be a little high, but again, this is you want to have a conservative estimate on the front end to capture and have a little bit of wiggle room in case you run into complications. So I'd be very confident going into this job, explaining to the customer and any material interested party, our numbers.
Adjust supplies and materials at all? Maybe?
Yeah. I mean, if there was anything I would adjust down, it would probably be the supplies and materials.
So we'll take that down to 15. Adjust it a little bit, not a whole lot.
We also had someone else pointed out that you added demo when I think you had said it was dry out only. I don't know if you wanted to address that.
There's going to be some level of demo to expose. You have probably baseboards, ceiling cavities you're going to have to access. So that's why we applied that demo and debris removal, because you will have some limited demo probably.
There's going to be something on the job that you're going to, it doesn't always mean that, you're demoing the whole facility. It's limited demo.
Yep.
Someone also asked if there was a crawl space.
In this example, we didn't apply it to have a crawl space. We just assumed a 2-level residential structure on a concrete slab.
But if you were to, then you would just use the false airspace also in here.
Or confined space, Tom. Yeah.
Yep. And you can use the confined space also. Yep. If you were to do that. And you can see that's going to drop down our numbers when we get into the crawl space with confined space combined. It would take us down to 189. And so, yes, if we're going to do that, it can be added in very quickly.
There was a question too that came in, Tom, while you're on the production rate calculator. What is the water damage with demo option for?
This is going to be, if we were going to do the job and say it was water damage with demo, and we weren't going to be doing any cleaning or anything, we could use this number, or going to get the right number here, and it would be 400. And so you have this option. And so this is going to be limited demo, maybe flood cuts, where you're coming in and you're going to be in and out. Then we also have the with no demo. And so that would be 600. So this would be if you were just setting equipment and you weren't doing any demo at all, to where we weren't cutting any access and we were only doing, the technicians were coming in and setting it up. Because even if we're only setting up equipment and we just have technicians on the job, we don't have to have a full crew for there to be a production rate. There will always be a production rate on every single job that we do. And that's why the Edge can be used on every single job that you do, because it applies that production rate. And so you can use these numbers if you want. So that's a choice that you have in here, or you can also do above the line like we did here. And so if we wanted, TJ, want to throw in that, we'll just throw that in here right now at 400. And we'll see what that does to our number. So automatically we're going to drop, we dropped a little bit here, not dramatically. 42 is our low number, 51 being our high number, mid number being 47. What do you think, T? Is that all right?
Well, I think it's still applying everything outside of the calculator. So
yes, it'll still apply.
Check those. Yeah,
it'll still apply. Well, it's going right off of 400, and so what it's going to do is recalculate everything, but because of the square footage, our labor is not going to change, and everything is really going to remain the same. So because of the square footage. So 42 would be the low, 47 would be your medium.
One other question that came in, and then we'll move on to the next section. Dan asked, doesn't the software automatically calculate the labor requirements once the data is all entered, or do we manually have to estimate labor time?
Automatically calculate is going to be these 4 categories. And so your supervisor labor and your production labor is always going to calculate. And if you see the system when we first built it was, I'm a commercial guy. And so it was really built for commercial work. But then once we applied it to residential, we started to see, okay, we just make these adjustments and it will work. And so, but with every project, we got to look at these and say, all right, these are baselines. This is the baseline, and then we're going to add into it with our experience, because we all estimate differently, and so and we all have a certain style. And the beautiful thing about the Edge is it adapts to every single style that is out there, and so that's why when you put together an estimate, we can have a room full of people and give them exactly the same data, and they will have a different number because it's just they're different. I call it the human factor. And so the human factor is you're going to come in and make these adjustments. You're going to add in additional labor because you believe that's what your experience tells you. And you're also going to come down and make the adjustments here based on your experience. And as you get used to using the system, this will be automatic. You'll come in and make these adjustments just like TJ did automatically, and just like I do also. And so you will do the same thing. The more you use it right next, so if you do an Xactimate and you use the Edge right next to it, you'll start to see the similarities. And then all of a sudden, it's like, bam. You'll get real close. And TJ is going to talk about that here in a second, how close he comes to Xactimate on a daily basis.
Tom,
Yeah,
just
one of the principles.
sorry, go ahead, TJ.
I was going to say, one of the principles in estimating with the Edge is, like Tom said, it gives you that foundation of what the job might look like, but you've got to take your experience as a project manager in the field and say, look at it and say, is this reality? You can't put one guy on a residential job to do all this work in 7 days. So you've got to apply your real world experience, and it's going to give you that baseline to build upon.
Tom, just before we hand it off to TJ to give us some more of that real world perspective, we have a question if we could click on a couple of the other tabs to show what this looks like in a final output. So can you show us that scope tab and the print and export?
Absolutely. Now, we didn't enter in any of the information here in our project overview. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip back in here and show you the Holiday Inn one. It'll be more complete. Let me get into the right one here. And so we'll go to print and export, and we'll select what we want to send to whoever we're sending it to. If we want to include the scope, we'll click on it. If we don't, we'll leave it blank. If we want to include the estimate breakouts, then we'll do that. If not, if we just want to do the cover sheet, I was talking with a client yesterday, and he hadn't used the system for a while, and so I was walking him through this. This is a new setup that we just applied in September, and so you click on that, and then you go to create your PDF. And so away it goes. And here is what your client gets. And it looks like this regardless of commercial or residential. And so here's our cover sheet that has all of our information on it. Here's our number. And then here's our itemized estimate where we break out everything that we did in the estimate is now in this breakout. We added this sheet because we had some adjusters. They wanted more information, and so we give everybody what they're asking for. And this goes for restorers also. This is a restoration tool built by a restorer. It's an estimating tool built by a restorer for restorers. And all of the updates that we've done in 2025 are from the restorer. And so this has been one of them, the restorer, and also consultants. JS Held and a lot of consultants are on the edge. They use the same tool, and back behind it, you'll see the scope of work. And then behind the scope will be our time and materials. And TJ will tell you that he has come back in and got the job signed while his competitor was still measuring the building. And that's how quickly it works, because we could literally take this and email it to the client, get it approved, signed, sealed, and done that same very day that we finished our damage assessment.
Great. We have lots more questions coming in, but I think we will, I'm going to hold off on those for now, and we'll address them a little bit towards the end, because I want to get to TJ's question, or TJ's portion of the presentation. Before we do that, we do have another poll that I'd like to launch. And this one is, how are you currently creating your initial ROMs, or those first numbers? So we'd love to collect your input here. And Tom, while people are responding to that, I'm going to take over the screen share again.
Okay.
And
Need to stop on my end?
nope, it should all be
All right.
seamless. Love it. I love it when technology works for us. Brilliant. All right, TJ, I'm going to throw it over to you to give us some real world feedback, results of how you are interacting with not only the Edge, but also how you're interacting with Encircle, because I know you use both systems on a daily basis, and how you're building. And Paul talked at the beginning about this being an operator, and I know that you are sort of the ultimate operator, and so I'm curious to know how you incorporate these tools into your business to run a high performance team. So I'll throw things over to you.
Thank you, Leah. I'm TJ Wyberly. Could have introduced myself earlier. I'm president of Patriot Restoration in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we have been, let's take a step back and look at, our process before I really started leveraging this estimating methodology. We used to use Xactimate and third-party estimers. It would take, sometimes days to even come up with a number or a scope of work. And every restorer knows that speed to lead and, your speed and professionalism in front of the client to present that you know what you're doing is critical. It's everything. Any time that you lose is losing money and losing opportunities. So, our process before we started leveraging this was, we were losing competitive situations, not because we weren't the best contractor, but because we were slow in getting a scope of work together and a ROM. So when you're the slowest to respond, your clients don't have a high level of confidence in you, and you can't grow your business and capture these opportunities with a slow process. So when we looked at rebuilding this process, I went to Tom's class in Florida to learn about the Edge, and it just clicked for us. And that's when we realized that we needed to change our process and completely change how we do things. And so now, leveraging this system, we can put together a scope of work and arrange on the ROM, sometimes within 15, 20 minutes, definitely within an hour or two, to not only show that we know what we're doing, but our level of confidence in our numbers. And so that establishes trust with your customers, with adjusters. You're providing them with a one-page document that lays out your process from damage assessment to providing the scope in qualitative detail and your number. And so when you lay this out for your customers and material interested parties, you can break it down and explain these numbers with a high level of confidence. So we teach our team, this estimating methodology, and we break that scope down for our technicians for them to follow in the field. Our estimators know what the job, requires and doesn't require, because we spend the time, the most time, capturing that information and data. In Encircle, we're taking our inspection photos, as you see on the screen here, your thermal images, documenting the damage, doing a thorough damage assessment. And you combine that with your scopes, your floor plans, your sketches, to have a complete package at the front end of the job, so that as you start the production of that, you have a budget to track against and a rock solid scope to put inside your contract with that price. So looking at a couple examples, to tell you how we've applied this into the field. The photos here are residential loss, similar to what we described earlier. And, you guys saw how fast we could walk through putting together that ROM based off of just photos that we capture in Encircle. You can do this in the field, or you can also estimate with the Edge, from the office. If you have an estimating hub, your technicians can take these photos in the field, giving you, your moisture points in hydro, your photos of the damage in Encircle, and the office can capture this information, and an estimator can plug into the Edge and get you a ROM and a scope of work very, very efficiently. So we've applied it to, not only residential, but commercial as well. And so I had a commercial water loss that was caused by a fire main burst. It was about 15,000 square feet. The property owner called us, and the property manager called another vendor, to where we arrived on site at the same time. Very competitive situation. We're both, kind of lean and maneuver to try to capture the job. And so we took this on site and put together a scope of work very quickly, based on the data that we had, the publicly available property data. We knew our square footage, we knew ceiling heights, we were standing right there, and put together a ROM in about 20 minutes and had it available in PDF form in the client's email for him to review. And that professional presentation, our confidence in our numbers, is what won us the job. And my competitor was still measuring the building with a laser. So when you look at your ability to produce a scope and a ROM with an insane amount of speed and have a high level of confidence in it, the Edge, it's exactly that. It gives you that edge to be able to, react quickly and show your professionalism. So now when we build these scopes, you have to remember this is on the front end of a job. This is not your invoice. You're producing a scope and a price to put in your contract to win those opportunities. And so when we provide these to adjusters and explain, if they have questions on where we get our data, you can break it down for them. And the result of that is, throughout your entire process, as you produce that work and track against that scope, it's going to make the back end way less of a fight and help every other process in your company, mainly being your accounts receivable. It doesn't matter if you use Xactimate on the back end. If it's very close, your final invoice is very close and within that range on your ROM, and you fully supported that scope of work through your documentation with tools like Encircle, it's way less of a fight to argue and seek approvals, and get paid. And so combining the Edge and Encircle, that's our process here at Patriot Restoration. Encircle is, it captures your job documentation and the damage, your moisture readings, your psychometrics in hydro, and then we leverage the Edge, and now they're going to be combined into one platform to make it even faster.
Thanks, TJ. When you look at applying it with your field teams, and Tom talks about labor production rates, How do you manage your teams to make sure that they're not going offside with the goalposts you've set on labor production rates?
Yeah, so the beautiful part about the ROM within Edge is that is essentially your budget. And so you have a budget for labor, and you're tracking against that through the whole project on a daily basis. And so you know if you want to complete that project in our example in 7 days with 4 guys, and you're 3 days in, but you've eaten up half of your labor budget, are you on target to finish that project on time with the amount of people that you outlined from the get-go? And so it allows you as an operator to capture those inefficiencies in the middle of a job versus looking back at the end of the job saying, where did we mess up?
Yeah. And Tom, let me bring you into that discussion too, because you review files.
Mhm.
How often do the files that get reviewed go over on the labor rates that you would assess from within the edge? Like, is there a correlation there to number of files getting pushed back on and labor production rates found in the edge?
Well, what we see is if you're using the edge, you're off that radar. If you're not using the edge, then it shows up in the labor. And so the first thing that we do when we're looking at a file, and this is a little secret that I'm going to give to everybody, this is a freebie, is the first thing that a file, when somebody's reviewing your file, the first thing they're going to do is a square footage number. And so they're going to take the total of the job, divide it by the square footage, gives them the square footage cost per square foot. An experience, someone like me, if I'm looking at that Holiday Inn, for example, someone like me is going to know if that Holiday Inn came in at $25 a square foot instead of the $14 a square foot, I'm going to have questions because it's like, okay, why? My experience is telling me that something's wrong. And usually, well, not usually, every single time it's the labor. There's too much labor on the job. It's not, and that's going to bring down your production rate. So remember, we wanted to be at 150. Now people are operating at 50 square feet, 60 square feet per person per day. So think about 50 square feet. That's all you're producing. And once you start looking at your jobs and thinking about what are we actually producing, you'll be asking yourself, man, why are we not producing? But the reason why people get in trouble is they just don't know what they need to look for. And these are the two, your square footage numbers and your labor production rates are the two main factors that you need to manage your jobs with.
Thanks, guys. TJ, there's a couple of questions that have come in before we move on to more of this great group discussion. Quite a few questions have come in around how does this work in terms of different types of jobs? How receptive are TPAs and carriers to receiving this number versus something like an Xactimate estimate? Can you just talk through that a little bit? I know that you do still use Xactimate in some cases. Can you just talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, TPAs, you contract with TPAs to follow their process, so you're not really going to be able to follow this process. But what I love utilizing this is educating adjusters on the data. And so by taking that itemized estimate that you saw earlier that breaks down your ROM into labor, materials, and equipment, you can explain to adjusters what the production rate is and what it, how it translates into your ROM. And so when you educate your customers and adjusters on the methodology, they start to understand and it makes sense. You can still do whatever you want on the back end. You have to remember this is the front end of your process. So whether you're billing time and materials or using Xactimate on the back end, you can still invoice utilizing your same methods that you're using today. It's just backed up on the front end by a very powerful set of data that like Tom said, production rates are around every industry. You look at manufacturing, any industry has a production rate for the output of the work. And so by explaining that to people and bolstering it with, look, we're still going to present our invoice in Xactimate form for you. This is just how we come to our estimate faster. And they're very receptive to it.
Yeah, transparency up front for adjusters helps in setting loss reserve. I mean, they always want that report as detailed as possible on the first day, and this just provides that detail. So overall, we found that they've been receptive to the greater degree of detail. And it certainly helps when the invoice comes in, there's going to be less questions because hopefully that discussion has happened up front.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, Paul, is it's easy to read, for the client. The Edge is very easy for the client to read and understand.
Yeah, Tom, and TJ, that's a question that actually came in, is like, what's your process for physically like showing this to the client? Like, are you getting them to sign this? Is this part of a package? Is this part of sort of like an onboarding sales process? Can you walk us through that a little bit? Just how you're using it as an educational tool for the client.
Yeah, for me, it's all of the above that you just mentioned. So we actually take the scope of work and we put it in an addendum to our contract or your work authorization, whatever you want to call it. So we're putting that scope, in writing in our contract, as well as that range of price so that it creates a binding contract with your client. You have to have 3 components in your contract to create that cost incurred for your client when it's an insurance claim, and it's scope of work, price, and the period of performance, how long it's going to take you. So we embed those 3 components into our contract to create a really bulletproof, agreement between our customers and our company.
Great. One of the questions really leads us nicely into the first topic that I wanted to talk to around use cases for the Edge. So some of the questions have come in, is this more for T&M jobs or commercial jobs? And I know you touched on it a little bit and we showed a residential, but can the 3 of you just sort of talk about the Edge and Encircle as part of the entire portfolio that a restorer can use it for, and all their different types of the different work that they'll see and how that ties into like the profitability and profit margins. I'll throw that over to you, Paul. Go ahead, TJ.
Go ahead, TJ.
Well,
you kick it off, and I'll back you up, buddy.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We apply it to every single job because it doesn't matter if it's residential, commercial. The same principles still apply. It's just at a different scale. So you can take this and apply it to every single job type. You just have to make those adjustments in your production rate to account for the size and scope of the work that you're going to be performing. So to me, you can use it on any job type.
Yeah, and so there was a question in the chat about floor plan. Encircle floor plan is there. You can see the numbers off the floor plan and plug it right into the Edge. So that's not a problem. Looking out further, the floor plan and all the detail in Encircle will eventually go into our AI scope that will automatically plug in with the Edge. That's a future, but today you can just take the elements in Encircle and plug them into the Edge. You saw there's not that many fields in there. And now you have confidence in the job. Your team has confidence in the job. The customer has confidence in you. And you're able to answer the questions to the adjuster. This isn't your estimate. This is your rough order of magnitude with all of the backup data that you're encapsulating in Encircle. And so, the output from the Edge can be pulled right into your Encircle report and sent to the adjuster, uploaded into Exact Analysis. Again, the biggest thing is inundate them with highly relevant, easy to read data so that the onus is on them to find a crack in your documentation and not you to prove every point where you don't have the level of detail that is required. And Tom, I'll throw it over to you with any comments.
Yeah, it can be used on any size job. Now, when we created the formulas in '98, we were a commercial restoration company. And when I started Large Loss Mastery, the training program, it's when I started to realize that it translated into residential also. And TJ has done an excellent job of, he came to our class here in Cape Canaveral, and he's taken and transformed how he does business. And now he's, we call it the matrix, and that's was where it began, because when we started putting these together, putting the formulas together, it was the same time the movie The Matrix came out. And so we always joke about it. Like Keanu Reeves, he's like seeing the numbers and the bullets, and he's like dodging everything because he can all of a sudden, he can see everything. So what sometimes happens in our industry now is we get into silos and stay in your lane. This is a tool that allows you to manage your business as you're doing it right now, but also grow your business to where now you can look at it through the wide lens. And that's what we want. We want to give you a tool that is proven. And, I'm still out there in the field with you guys and using everything that, we teach. What we teach, we do. And so it's all there. And that's what makes it so effective, is it's had such a long history of success.
All right, I'm going to throw another question out to you guys. Tom, I'll start with you. You have been in the industry for many years. What's the biggest shift that you're seeing, let's say in the last 12 to 18 months and going forward? What's the biggest shift that you're seeing in how contractors are approaching estimating, and maybe how you think maybe they should think differently about estimating going forward?
Well, I started 40 years ago, and a lot of changes. There's been a lot of technology changes. I think the best changes that we've seen are in the software. We can track jobs, track our documentation, but I can tell you the number one thing that's always been difficult to get on jobs is documentation. No matter how easy you make it, it's like, dang, daily, you got to get the daily reports in. And that's always been an issue. So for everybody out there, take advantage of Encircle's products, because where we're at and where we're going with this is phenomenal. What bothers me about what's happening with some of the younger restorers is getting into that, stuck in your lane type of mentality. And I don't like that. I come from a world where there were no TPAs. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was no such thing as a TPA until the late 90s and early 2000s. So, we went out, we seen a job, we got a job, and we sold it. We were doing the estimate, we did everything and performed the job. I don't want restorers to think that there's only one way to do things. Xactimate is an incredible tool. It was originally created for construction projects, and it translated into the carriers because obviously they want a standardized deal. But it is not the only only estimating system out there. The industry, as we know it, was born on time and materials. And so you can use the Edge strictly for time and materials, or you can plug into the Edge. You can plug in Xactimate rates. It's a perfect companion tool for whatever estimating system that you're using. What it's made for is to give you the edge and give you the power to create a number quickly that you can have faith in, that you can run the project on, and also all the data that comes with it, all the breakout, what you're expecting the job to be. And it looks really, really professional and easy to read to the client. That's the big thing. You don't want to create a ROM that has 100 or 2,000 line items. That's not a ROM. 2,000 line items in 40 pages. That's not a ROM. That's an invoice. And so your ROM is boom, to the point. Here's what it's going to be. Here's our estimated range, what we're expecting it to be. And so if you're turning in a 130-page document, that's not a ROM, because it's going to take somebody 2 days just to read it and to see what's going on. You want to produce a ROM to where you can sit down and have a 45-minute meeting and sign the job. And that's what this is all about. It's about giving the restorer the power. And so that's what I from coming from the child of the 80s in restoration, I want the restorers of today to have that power that we had back then, where there were no constraints on us. We were not in any type of lane or a silo. It was wide open. And that's the way you need to treat your businesses. It's wide open. Don't leave anything behind. Make sure you're capturing everything and being as profitable and as efficient as possible.
TJ, do you have anything you wanted to add to that from your perspective? I mean, you're in the field every day. How are you seeing this shift to taking back control play out day to day for you?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, there's a shift to, retail, where restorers are contracting directly with their customers. Deductibles are higher, insurance isn't always involved, and this tool gives you the ability to present, your knowledge and professionalism with accuracy. And as we move forward, with all the changes in technology, the AI, which is coming into Encircle, your data inside your business is going to become more critical. And that's what's changed the game for me and my business, is actually tracking this data and see how we perform on our production rate and on a square foot basis. And so we know, with a high degree of certainty where we're going to be on jobs and how we're going to produce them. So data management is, on the back end of using the Edge, actually tracking how you perform on these jobs, it can change your business.
You teed that up perfectly for me, TJ, because my next question was going to be for Paul around AI and where does AI and automation fit into all of this and this shift that Tom talked about?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. Really, the field documentation is a critical part of substantiating the work that you've done, because restorers get paid for the work they document, not the work they do. But we're able to take that documentation now and build components that would have taken you hours and hours of administrative overhead and reduce that substantially and drive up the accuracy, meaning not leaving line items on the table that are high margin that will help in your profitability. So think about, our floor plan, our photos, videos, notes, your video recordings of the cause of loss, resulting damages, and work that needs to be done, all generating a detailed scope that's also plugging directly into the Edge, giving you, number one, the ability to look at the scope, make it your own, edit it, and make it the final scope, and then generate the ROM through the Edge with very little administrative overhead. You'll be able to do that in the field. Your estimator in the office will be able to do it in the office if he wants, but this will take a fraction of the time that it used to, so that you can spend more time, like TJ said, managing the important elements of your job, gaining an understanding of the resources you need and what those resources need to be applied to before you even have them go out on site. So instead of a historical looking in and going, why didn't we make money? This is a proactive look to know exactly how we're going to make money, and I'm going to track this job to this profit metric. It's the way Amazon runs. It's the way all scaling businesses run globally. And like I said earlier, this industry is not going anywhere. Your businesses are solid if you become an operator. And that's what I'm super excited about. We're now going to leverage the hard work you put into learning Encircle and then help you really run your business.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think TJ mentioned to me earlier this week that, I think, TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but you spend 90% of your time is spent on that scope up front. So taking what we're doing in Encircle to really cut that administrative time of producing that scope just based on the documentation that's there, getting to that scope faster. So then you can take that information that's done within minutes, add it to your ROM that you're creating in minutes, and just being able to be on top of what's ahead and being able to plan and look at your data. I think that's super exciting for what we're looking ahead for. Super exciting, also controversial. So I'm going to throw up a poll, and I'm just curious to get everybody's perspective. If there is a position in the workflow, your entire workflow, that you would most like to see disrupted by automation, what would that position be? So this is the $1 million question. It can ruffle some feathers, but we like to be disruptive around here. So I'm going to leave that poll up for a little bit, and we are just starting to come to the end of our time together, and I want to make sure that we leave time for some of the questions. There's been some questions coming in around logistics, around purchasing the edge, which is super exciting. But I want to just get to some key takeaways. So Tom, I'm going to start with you. You talked a lot about production rate and knowing and really nailing that labor and your staffing number. So if restorers could remember one thing about production rate estimating, what should it be?
I'll give you some the one thing that you have to remember, and Paul touched on it just a second ago, is every major manufacturing facility in the world manages their factories on production rate. Well, Amazon is a perfect example. They know down to the minute what they're expecting out of their people or robots, because it doesn't matter if it's people or robots, it's still production, and there's still a production rate involved. And so what we want to do is take what they're doing, that those companies that are managing their time perfectly, we want to do the same thing for restoration companies, because once we start doing that, all of a sudden, there's nothing to argue about in our invoices. All of a sudden, you're getting paid quicker. All of a sudden, there's less blowback. All of a sudden, you're getting more approvals on the front end. All of a sudden, things work smoother. But the problem is we don't make that transition. I'll give you two numbers to remember for the rest of your life, for everybody that's on this call. Two numbers. So one is your square footage number. And your square footage number, you're going to have a range, and you're going to start in this range of about $10 to $15 a square foot. You're going to go up or you're going to go down based on the difficulty or the ease of the project. Your production rate, your square foot per person per day, you're going to start at 150. And you're going to go up or go down based on the complexities of the job or the ease of the job. So if it's easier, the number is going to be higher. If it's lower, then it's going to be a more difficult job. Maybe it's a mold job. Maybe it's a industrial job where we're in and out of PPE all day long, lots of filters and stuff. Our production rate is going to go down. So think about that 150 on every job that you go out to now, and think about, okay, is it going to go up or go down from 150 on this particular job based on the criteria of that project.
Great. Thanks, Tom. TJ, I'm going to kick it over to you for your last thoughts on advice that you would give to the folks who have joined us today who are considering changing up their process as well. What advice can you give to them? What's changed the most for you since transforming your business processes and becoming more of an operator?
Yeah, I think for me is I would try to think outside the box and step out of the norms and doing it the way that everybody else does it, because there are other ways to do it, and it can dramatically impact your business, from a process standpoint, from a people standpoint, all the way down to your profitability. So don't be afraid to step outside the box and try something different, but lean into it and track the data on the back end as well.
Great. And Paul, I'm gonna, before we take some of the last questions that have come through, I'm gonna leave you with the last words. What's next? You know, you've touched on this a little bit, but sum it up for us. What's next? Encircle has acquired the Edge. What's next for the Edge and Encircle as a team?
Yeah, it's all about integration. And remember too, we we operate as an open ecosystem. We do have APIs on GitHub. Maybe not too many people are familiar with it, but you, the restorer, are in control of what other systems you want to connect Encircle into. So we will always maintain that, but there's some certain elements that we think are just a natural fit with the Encircle platform because you've got the data all in one place. So applying the ROM, using AI to auto-generate the scopes, and then eventually using the scopes in our and the Edge to generate an estimate. So the estimate could be out of Xactimate, could be out of hopefully totality estimate, could be custom price lists, could be T&M. We want to democratize how the estimate is written because at the end of the day, we've got all of the referenceable, auditable details within the platform. You've captured those as a restorer, or you should. And then it's about now you applying your rates, because it's a free market system. What are the rates that you need to charge in order to make a profit? And you define the profit you want to set for your organization. So again, to wrap it up, it's leveraging the hard work you're doing in Encircle to get paid to then drive greater efficiency upstream and greater control over your business for each restorer.
Great. Thanks, Paul. We're moving on to the last section before we wrap for the day. Just a couple of questions that have come through. The first one is for you, Tom. Does the Edge have predictive reasoning for labor based on company data that changes over time? And second part of the question is, can we see our production rates, or is this based only on the built-in numbers?
That's a great question. I'll tackle that. We'll come back to each one of you has labor production rates that you're operating on right now. Each job that you have performed, there is a labor production rate inside that project. So you can use either the production rates that are in the Edge currently. Those are your baselines. So what we've done is we've created baselines for you can start. You can go up or go down. It's totally adjustable to the user and how you perform, because we all perform differently on projects. But we give you those baselines. And so from there, you can make those adjustments. Now, what was the first part of the question, Leah? I'm sorry.
Go back to it. It talks about, does the Edge have predictive reasoning for labor based on company data that changes over time? I think it's related to the second part that you already answered.
Yeah, it's all based on how you perform and how you estimate. And so what you'll find is as the more you use the Edge, it becomes how you're thinking. And so just like when TJ and I fired up, if I have a client that called me up right now and they might be looking at a 1 million square foot building, and they give me all the data, we will have a number within 30 minutes. And it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 square feet or 1 million square feet. You can even use it, all the way down. I think TJ will tell you 500 square feet is kind of the minimum, the bottom. You can still use it, but I've had guys use it, for factoring a board up job, and so.
Let me take this in a different way.
Yeah.
If you were using predictive reasoning, you're kind of looking at a historical view, because you would need to see how you're producing in order to give you the prediction. Really what we're doing here is giving you a baseline, which you can calculate on your own. Just go back to projects and say, what were my labor costs and the square footage. So using the same methodology that Tom laid out for you, calculate it and say, are you happy with that? Did I make a profit on that job?
Mhm.
Maybe I need to adjust my labor rate expectations with my team on the next job of this type. So really, it's a fluid situation, but I would guarantee you that TJ, in his mind, he knows exactly what the production rate should be on each of those jobs.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
TJ?
Yeah, and the main reason I know that is because we track it on every job. So after the job's over, we look at the square footage, how many man days did it take, and how many guys did it take to perform it, which gives you your production rate looking back at the job. And so I know in my company, across all jobs that we do, that we average a production rate of around 140. And so I start with that as my baseline going into every job and adjust up or down based on the scope.
Yeah. And in the future, as we integrate the Edge into Encircle, we will track that across all jobs and give you what your current run rate is. But again, you'll need to adjust that based on whether that's delivering the profit margin you expect or not.
And that will be per type of job too, Paul, where it'll be fire, water, mold, whatever it is, you will have that running number. And so yes, there's very exciting things.
Great. TJ, I'm going to ask the next question to you, and Xactimate has come up quite a bit in the chat. But how do you find when you are using, let's say, like T&M or Xactimate, how accurate or how close is your ROM typically coming to your sort of final end of the chain invoice?
Yeah, so I mean, you can take your labor rates that are in Xactimate, plug them into the Edge where they match, and we've come within $100 of our ROM using Xactimate for our invoice because we've gotten so good at scoping and mapping that ROM to that scope. So as the more that you use it, the more fine-tuned you become to your own data and your own production teams, and you can get very accurate. I mean, we had a commercial loss, that example that I gave that was competitive that we won. It was a $280,000 job, and I think my ROM range was 260 to 310. So we just about nailed it.
Right. That touches a little bit on another question that I have for you guys around learning curve. And we know that that learning new things is always fun, learning new software especially. So Tom, TJ, what's the learning curve like with the Edge?
TJ, I'll let you start because I'm partial.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started using the Edge, I went home after taking the class and, practicing with it and just started doing it on jobs, not even as a part of our workflow, but just started using it. And it's very intuitive, especially to your operationally minded, PMs or technicians, because it's stuff that they're looking at every day. Those components that go into your production rate are the same components that you look at on every single job. So it's very easy to apply, and it's just having a baseline of 5 to 10 jobs where you track your production rate and you do this process on the front end and see how you come out and making fine-tune adjustments from there. So to me, the learning curve is very easy, very much so easier than Xactimate.
Yeah, I think one of the keys is to, as TJ said, calculate the production rate you've had on like jobs in the past, and that'll give you a sense of where you are now today, and then compare that to what the Edge sets as the median on your labor production rates, and then make a decision from there. But you've got the historical data, and it's fairly easy to calculate, I would say. Correct, Tom?
Yes, and always remember that the Edge, was created by a restorer in the field, and we needed numbers that we could get quickly, and so it doesn't have a huge learning curve. It's new when you first see it, but it's built on old formulas, and so formulas that are proven. I shouldn't say old, but proven formulas over the years. And so it may be new to you, but once you learn it and you use it, you'll be like, man, why have I not been using this for the last 15 years?
Tom, Paul, TJ, that's it. We are at time. Any final words for people before we go?
Yeah, my final word is I want all of you to be operators. I want all of you to run profitable shops, scale. The opportunity is there. We're here to help you get to that point. It's within everybody's reach to achieve this.
So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tom, TJ, Paul, for joining us. This was a great session. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. And thanks for hosting, Leah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Here's everybody.